Okay, it's Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. This is Wednesday, the 21st of October, 2020. I'm using my internal microphone today because what I found yesterday is that the headphone and the other microphone I was using basically got all jumbled up. The video was fine, but the audio got all jumbled up. Nonetheless, what I want to talk to you about today is the Virginia Military Institute. About 2.5 months ago, the Institute decided it was not going to remove the Stonewall Jackson statue, that it would make some procedural changes in some of the procedures that they have there or the honors that they have there with some of the students to reflect a more inclusive type of environment and thereby de-emphasize the Confederate heritage. But they decided they were not going to take down the Stonewall Jackson statue. So I wrote a letter to the superintendent and congratulated him on that and noted that it took some courage to do that in late July, early August, when other places were taking statues down and mobs were destroying them. But I guess I should have anticipated that 2.5 months later that somebody, and in this case it was the Washington Post, wrote an article that accused the VMI of being systemically racist. And I would say, and I'll probably get accused of being racist here, but I would say that the chances of a state-supported school, tax-supported school, as prominent as the Virginia Military Institute, being systemically racist in the year 2020, were about as slim as an Apache Indian getting elected Pope. And that's about as slim as chance it can get. There seems to be a cult of Black suffering that exists now that denies all the progress that has been made in race relations since the 1950s and actually imagines offenses that are insignificant or that don't even exist. It's ironic, the governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, is a graduate of the Virginia Military Institute, and he graduated in 1981. And then he went on to become a physician. And at medical school, in his yearbook, you may remember, there was a picture of him published out of the yearbook in which his name was under the picture. There were two people in the picture. One was dressed up in a Ku Klux Klan outfit, so underneath the hood, you couldn't tell who was there. And the other one was in blackface, and you couldn't tell really who that was. And at the time, Northam said, well, I don't think I'm either one of them, but if I am one of them, I can't tell which one. And if I am one of them, I really apologize for it. And, he's a Democrat. So is obligated to pander to this Black Lives Matter movement and to this bogus claim of systemic racism existing in the United States today. And so he called for a third-party investigation of the Virginia Military Institute. And of course, that's what the Washington Post wanted. It's remarkable just how far this goes. The Washington Post, I got acquainted with. First, let me say, yes, I have to confess that there is racism in the United States. There's racism in the South. There's racism in Virginia, but it's de minimis. Let's face it. Most of the Blacks that do not live in the United States are wanting to get here. They are anxious to get here. Why? Because there's opportunity here. If this was really as racist a place as the Black Lives Matter movement would have us believe, and the Antifa people would have us believe, there wouldn't be such a waiting line of Blacks wanting to get into the country. That's just a fact, or it's just a logical deduction. Nonetheless, systemic racism existed when I was a boy in the 50s. Yes. In the South, yes. Today, the only systemic racism, the only legal racism is affirmative action, which favors Blacks over Asians, another racial minority, and even Jewish people, which typically have high academic standards. And they are being penalized by systemic racism that favors Blacks primarily, and I guess to another lesser extent, Hispanics. This has gone too far. And the attacks on the Confederate memorials is just the low-hanging fruit. I mean, that's an overused expression. I guess the cliches have legitimacy, and in that case, it applies. But the Virginia Military Institute has a honored tradition, and the tradition should be honored. During the Civil War, it was supported by the state, and it reported the loyalty of that institution was to the state of Virginia. Its students were loyal to the state of Virginia, and they had not graduated from high school. They were still basically high school students. And in 1864, when Union armies invaded the Shenandoah Valley and the Confederate armies had been depleted by earlier losses during the war, a Confederate commander asked the superintendent of the Virginia Military Institute, "Can you provide some soldiers for us? We need them if we're going to repel the Yankee army that has invaded the Shenandoah Valley." And he did. He provided, I think, about 250, maybe 300 students that were put into the Confederate army, and they fought at the Battle of Newmarket. And some of them were killed, some were wounded. And their loyalty was to their state, which was natural. People in the 1860s rarely got outside of their counties, even more rarely got outside of their states. If they paid taxes, they paid taxes to the state. The only taxes that they would pay to the federal government would be if they bought imported items that had a tariff on it. So it was natural for them to be loyal there. And for the high school students, young boys or young men, clearly teenagers, to willingly put their lives on the line for the state of Virginia merits respect. And if that respect has to be shown by showing the Confederate flag or showing the VMI flag in conjunction with the Confederate flag, or a statue of Stonewall Jackson, who was an instructor there, then so be it. That's the right thing to do. Anyone that's offended by that would be better served to learn a lesson from it. Show me first that you have the courage to stand up for your country the way those young boys stood up for Virginia. Then you can talk to me about the microaggressions that you feel. And I don't think you'll feel them. I think you'll see that they're insignificant. But of course, Ralph Northam is now a politician, governor of Virginia, and he's insisting that there be a third-party investigation of VMI. But, you know, having been there in 1981, being a graduate there, and being dressed either in blackface or a Ku Klux Klan outfit, it seems rather hypocritical for him to be taking the attitude that he's taking now, especially since VMI and Washington Lee have been radically changed since he was there, as have virtually all college campuses. They're just the only racism that I think that exists, the only systemic racism aside from affirmative action, and this isn't really legally enforced racism, but it's the authority given by some of the colleges to allow blacks to have their own dormitory. That's segregation. That's what they fought against in the 1950s and 60s. So the Virginia Military Institute, I trust and hope, will retain its tradition. If they can't continue to honor those boys that sacrificed in the Confederate Army for their state, then I think they lose not only tradition, but they lose value. Because the lessons that will be taught after that are not lessons of sacrifice, but they're lessons of self-centeredness. They're lessons of easy to take offense. I think, it's been said by others that, some of the soldiers that landed at Normandy and those LSTs and the ones in front met almost certain death. They were what, 19, 20, 18? They didn't complain about microaggressions. Anybody that has a microaggression that upsets them is just obsessed with victimhood. And I can't imagine anyone ever being happy if they go through life believing themselves to be victims and requiring that the world change to prevent them from being victims. Because what we're seeing is that anyone who is convinced they're a victim because of endemic characteristics such as skin color or gender is never satisfied. Whatever might be done in society to accommodate them is never enough. So it will be interesting to see what the hell happens next. So anyway, for Philip Lee, I want to just show you my latest Civil War book, Causes of the Civil War. It's just out last month, September 2020. And if you want to learn facts and explanations that will help you defend Confederate memorials should you stand before a government body to make your case, that's what this book was written for. I had been working on it for some time before May of this year, but in May or this year, in June, when I started seeing the mobs destroy our statues and memorials, and I've seen the cowardice of the Gettysburg guides saying, well, we want to defend the monuments here on the national parks because, well, and they don't say it, but the reason is because they earn a living by showing people around on the parks. And they realize that if the Confederate monuments are taken off the parks, there'll be fewer visitors and their business will go down. But they haven't stood up, they haven't made any case to defend the Confederate statues outside the national parks. Another example is the American Battlefield Trust. Yeah, give them money and they'll acquire land for Civil War battles, but they're not gonna, and they have so far refused to make any statement or anything more than a mushy, meaningless statement about defending Confederate monuments. I've written them, and I know they're just standing back, even though 97%, I think over 90% of the subscribers to their magazine who took the survey that they sent around about 3 years ago said Confederate monuments should remain in national parks. Nonetheless, I guess I'll finish with this story. I was in Lexington in January, and the Washington Post, which is Washington Post, sent a reporter there for the Lee Jackson Day celebration by the Sons of Confederate Veterans local chapter, and also a number of other SCV groups came in for that. And I was the speaker. The Washington Post guy and I were talking before I spoke, and I had a written speech. I like to have written speeches. I don't write now, as you can tell, but I like to have written speeches because it helps me improve my writing, and it really makes the message concise. So he asked me if I could have a copy of the speech. I said, sure, give me your email, and he did. And so I sent him an email copy of the speech. He said he would call me to go over it. He never called me. And I saw an article in the Washington Post a few days later in which he said that somebody had asked me whether, if the Civil War was not about slavery, then why did the secession, the Declarations of Secession declare that it was? Nobody asked me that question. I had an answer. I discussed it just yesterday on Civil War Chat. And but he didn't ask that. He didn't ask that. So I sent him an email, because he had given me his email address. And said, hey, I don't remember you asking that question, but, if you had, here's what I would have said. He never responded. So I sent a letter to the Washington Post saying, I contacted your reporter who I think really misquoted me or misrepresented the situation. And here's my letter to the editor explaining what really happened. This is the question he said I was asked. I wasn't. But if I was, here's the answer I would have given. I condensed it enough to meet their requirements for a letter. But no response, none at all. So I was, to be truthful, I didn't expect anything from the Washington Post. They've really become corrupted. Like the New York Times, they are truly, the media, the leading media in this country is truly corrupted. Their job is supposed to be the watchdog, but they're not the watchdog. They are completely one-sided. They have an agenda that's hostile to my interest in terms of Confederate memory and presumably yours. So again, I will close with, if you'd like to get a copy of this book, you can get it at Amazon.com. It's Causes of the Civil War by me, Philip Lee, L-E-I-G-H is the last name spelling. If you want to get a signed copy, contact me at Phil_Lee, L-E-I-G-H, at me.com, at me.com, me.com. Okay, thanks for watching.